like what Chris said here, is it something that, would you contact, be on that list to say, okay, go to collections, or would it be something that, or would they have to go to collections and that's when the legal matters?
We would follow the same policy that we currently do, so we would send the statements, we'd send you the list, and you would tell us if you wanted to go to collections or not.
Okay.
Unless you wanted something completely different. If you said, look, all these lift assists, we just automatically want them to go to collections after 3 bills, you don't have to send it to me, we can do that, or automatically write them off, we'll do that. We can set up a separate process if you don't want to follow the current one with those.
Okay.
So y'all send it to collections, do you own the collections company, or you just farm them out?
I'm sorry, do
you own the collections?
I'm not
company?
sure who your collection is. Okay, so we do not,
Okay.
no. We do have a collection agency that we own that is part of our business, but Wakefield is not it.
Okay, that'd be someone that we need to talk to.
And Wakefield was one that we literally, I believe it was May, we
Mhm.
voted on, or I say they voted on.
Oh, yeah.
That's when we transfer to, back in March or April, I think it was. Am I right?
It's March.
March, okay.
Yeah, we just don't need to let any money go by.
Well, you're taking an ambulance out of service to take somebody, to go to somebody's home for a lift assist, so
Mhm.
you should be recouping some money for that, absolutely. And it's not unusual, there's many agencies that are doing that now, because it does take an ambulance out of service.
Well, even worse than that, takes some personnel who are trained,
Right.
and trained personnel, they're worth their weight in gold.
Absolutely. Yes.
Something else that, kind of changed gears, but kind of along the same line here, MVA,
Yes.
motor vehicle accidents, treatment, no transports,
Mhm.
apparently being able to bill if you get a refusal, and with one set of vital signs.
There is no set guideline that says you have to do any particular procedures or skill set on somebody to do a treatment, no transport. So if you do not have to have one set of vitals, you don't have to have anything. If you showed up on scene to an MVA and you said, were you a passenger in the car? And they say, yes, well, how are you feeling? I'm fine. Do you have any problems? No, I don't. Do you want to go to the hospital? No, I don't. Okay, sign here. You don't have to have done vitals or anything. So you can bill as a treatment, no transport.
Go ahead.
On the MVA, this happens a lot in Rutherford County. If you have when you have this wreck, and there's no injuries, but yet someone's driving by, and they call 911,
Right.
how are you gonna, if the parties involved did not want 911? I mean, you also cannot bill those folks if they are not the ones that for one make the call.
So we don't know from the billing perspective who called 911.
Right.
Now, we do have clients that say if the patient didn't call or a family member didn't call, then we don't want them billed. There's a couple of ways we can deal with that. One, it could be up to the EMS agency to figure out who called 911. And then if they didn't call, the patient didn't call, then you just don't submit the claim to us. You don't have to submit the account. If EMS doesn't know who called, you submit the account to us and we bill. If the patient calls and says, look, I never called 911, it was a bystander or whatever, then we could come back to you and say, look, this is what this patient is claiming. Do you want to go ahead and write this off, or should we continue to bill them, or what do you want to do?
You also get insurance. Because you're gonna find out from the police who their insurance company is, and then you submit the bill to them.
Yeah, and we would submit the bill to the motor vehicle company, to the policy holder. And a lot of times auto will pay for things like that. If they do, by chance, maybe they have a high deductible or something, then it would go to the patient. But even non-motor vehicle, even treatment, no transport, diabetics is a big thing too. You show up, you give them sugar, they wake up, they don't want to go to the hospital, but you've assessed them, you've started an IV, possibly you've given them a medication, all these things that cost the agency money, and then they don't end up going, you can bill a treatment, no transport for them as well.
those fees set by us, you guys?
They are set by you.
Okay.
And you can basically set them. What I advise is, if you don't wanna do just one flat treatment, no transport fee for everybody, then what I would advise is you come up with two separate ones, one that would be like BLS treatment and one that would be ALS treatment. And then you have those two separate things. You can do like, you can say, well, this was an MVA and this is what we charge, but it gets very confusing when you do that, and there's just too many fees going on in your fee schedule then, and there's just room for error. So I would suggest either one flat one across the board, or go the ALS, BLS route.
Now, for a newbie, what is ALS and BLS?
Advanced life support or basic life support.
Okay.
They fall under two different, you have AEMTs, which can, they work under their license up to, there's only certain things that they can do. And then you have paramedics that can provide ALS. And even further now, we have several now, critical care paramedics.
What would be, if you had a diabetic seizure, who could take care of that? BLS or?
Well,
ALS?
in this county, who is it, can EMTs push D50 here?
D50, yes.
I know in Rutherford, you cannot, an EMT was not, it had to be a paramedic, that was a ALS call.
Okay.
I mean, your license, the AMTs are licensed by the state. That is isn't that a drug under there as an AMT, but Rutherford had different protocols. When I used to work here, you could do anything that any skill under your licensure.
Okay.
So,
No, I was just curious, that was one thing that, thank you.
but, if you're talking about seizures and stuff, that's ALS.
Okay.
There's no AEMT that should be riding in the back of the truck on
Okay.
that. No. Or treatment, no transport. They need to go to the hospital.
Anybody else? I'm hogging the meat here.
No, go ahead. This is, these were all questions that were asked to you, Dick, and this is your opportunity to get answers for them.
Charles, chime in.
I just think it ought to be a set rate for all refusals and, not try to go back and forth on the price. I think it ought to be one
I agree.
fee
with that
straight across the
because
board,
you're,
because it's gonna be confusing if it ain't.
and you're gonna get into a lot of, I just think one set rates. What you can do.
Yeah, because you had to prove, and proving is very, very time.
Mhm.
Yeah, the only thing you wanna consider is that you wanna set it high enough that you're covering costs,
Right.
but those costs are different between ALS and BLS. And so if you have a patient where you show up at an MVA and you don't do anything, versus a diabetic you start an IV on, if your charge, let's say, is $300, your MVA person's gonna be really upset.
Exactly.
So you gotta have a happy medium there somewhere.
Do you have a list? I didn't know we got that list of those charges. We do have that idea of that,
You talking about the commission meeting that night? I don't.
You're fine. Did you by chance bring yours, Russell? No, we did. I think I did either. That's fine.
Keep going to something else and then I'll look through
Yeah,
those.
because I was wanting to look at our charges just to see. And I apologize. I was gonna thought I had everything down. Well, so let's talk about, I mean, just to be honest, recuperate. So some of these charges we're talking about, especially if we're talking about charging, starting to charge, the citizens. Obviously, the argument, and I totally get it, some of the citizens are gonna say, well, I pay taxes, why am I having to, and I, obviously see both sides of the coin. So what are some of the negative side, whatever negative kickbacks that you guys are receiving?
Do you receive tax money then
Mhm.
through the EMS? Okay. So we do get that, and I don't know what is mandated here in this county, but typically EMS is not a mandated service. It's typically fire and police that are mandated, and EMS just kind of falls to the end of the line. And I don't know if that's the same here. But typically, that's what we are responding to patients, is that the EMS agency may get some tax dollars, but they're getting very, very little. That the police and the fire are mandated, they have to support them, they have to take your tax dollars to give to them, and essentially very little is going to EMS. It's not mandated, and they don't actually have to have a local service to respond to you. And so this money is to help to make up for the lack of that funding overall, and from what your insurance carriers are not paying.
Oh, is that what-
That's the list right there.
And I know that is a very poor copy, that's my fault, I apologize.
That's okay.
But you can make out those numbers when they're changing years. Unless there's, somebody else wanna ask questions on what we're talking about?
I have one. Well, what's just a ballpark figure on what other counties are charging for these services, these non-billable? I mean, it's non-chargeable, what the
Right, the
refusals?
treatment, the refusals, the
Yeah.
treatment, so I would have to go back and really look into that, but there is a wide variety of, like a lift assist may be $50, maybe 75, something like that. But for the treatment, no transport, I would say that they are probably, if they're just doing a flat rate, it's probably about $200 to $250. If they're breaking it up between BLS and ALS, then your ALS is gonna be a little bit higher. But I can go back and get sort of an average of what all of the clients do, or specifically in Tennessee.
That'd be great.
Thank you.
Seems very appropriate for a BLS price tag and a ALS price tag. And there's a big difference between a scrape and a wreck. A scrape it from a fall on the sidewalk versus you show up and somebody's had a diabetic in the 30s and there's too stubborn to roll with you once you get in the 60s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's more likely you rolling back out there.
Yeah.
And I know something you guys do, because I've had people contact me, you guys do set up payment plans, correct?
We do.
And is there like a minimum per month you guys set up, or?
We would follow your direction on that. We typically, honestly, we have some agencies that say, if you'll take $5, take $5. But we tend to like to start that, like maybe $50, but we would do whatever you wanted to do.
You want to have it so low that it wasn't important to somebody to get this paid off.
We
Right.
do have a county that before they came with us, with A&B, that they would take $5 payments, and they've had people making $5 payments for years, because the bill was $800 and some dollars, and they paid $5 a month, so they've literally been paying that for 5 years.
It costs you more to recoup this than does people work.
It does.
Okay. And I guess, two more for you, go ahead.
No, I'm just gonna tell you, I'm the money guys. Don't look suspiciously at me.
Okay, so the roundabout question, just picking your brain, what is something that potentially is an ambulance service, small rural county, to do to make it better? Obviously, patient care is number one.
Sure.
It always will be. But obviously, like Chris said, there is a business side to it.
Yeah.
So you tell us, if you don't mind, just, in a few words, how is something, how can we improve the service, what we're doing, with the.
Well, you don't want to, if you want to start doing the treatment, no transport, the lift assist, things like that, you never want to take the citizens off guard, right? So I would say you want to kind of publicize that and put that out there. But with the caveat that don't not call us, you know what I mean? Like, you should still need to call us if you need us, that's what we're here for. We have worked with a couple other agencies that have done that, and the citizens have really appreciated that. I don't know personally if it has affected their call volume. I think what it did affect, though, was the ones that they maybe had more frequent flyers. With those patients getting more and more bills, it cut down on that. But somebody who has fallen, who truly does need help getting up, somebody who's suffering from, diabetes or whatever it is, low sugar, those people were still calling, and they did not, have problems paying the bill either, because there was a response and they did get the help.
Anything else? The charge sheet you have in front of you, and I apologize, ma'am, if you don't mind if I don't.
It's okay.
Tell us, if you can see, now those are our current charges, from what I understand, Stephen, from 2014.
Okay.
Tell us, and I know it's hard, and matter of fact, if you can't answer this like you would want to tonight, if you can just get a response back to like me, or even get it to court, maybe if you need. How are our rates looking compared to other counties, you know, obviously comparable to our size? And are we too low, too high, right where we need to be?
So your, are you guys considered urban or rural?
Here is the problem with that.
We've been chasing that rabbit for quite a while.
In the parts of the county that border like Rutherford,
Yes,
it is, urban.
okay,
Then you have parts that border like Warren County are considered rural.
okay.
But I think overall, we are charging a urban rate, aren't we, Jay?
That's correct.
Okay,
Of course, that goes by zip code too. so-
Yes, some, like in the area I'm in, the readable zip code splits over into Rutherford County.
okay.
And I think that may have a bearing on whether it's rural or urban based upon the median incomes and the housing in
Right.
big cities.
Okay, so what I can tell you is that your ALS emergency charge is $425 according to this sheet that you gave me. Medicare's allowable rate is $418.75. So you're probably charging not enough. Because what you want to base your rates on are not necessarily Medicare or Medicaid. What you want to base your rates on are commercial payers. Because commercial payers, and the gentleman earlier spoke to that, they're going to pay 90 to 100% of the bill. So your commercial payers are the ones that are going to make up for your Medicaids and some of your Medicare money as well. So if you're only charging $425 for an ALS emergency, if Medicare is allowing $418, then you're not getting much more from a commercial payer to make up for that. So I would probably look to increase your rates, and if you haven't, you said 2014?
That's-
Yeah.
That's right, Russell, isn't that the last time we went
I
to?
believe that's correct.
So you probably want to look into what the overall cost is, and, you know, what is the cost of an ALS transport for you, a BLS transport, an ALS2 transport, and then look to raise your rates.
So, and I'm sorry, just to go ahead, the BLS, you said ALS, but what are the?
The BLS, let me see, BLS emergency, you charge $400, and Medicare's allowable is $352 and change. Your ALS, you're losing money on, your ALS 2. So ALS 2, you charge $575, and Medicare allows $606.
What are we charging?
We don't have every
$575.
class.
575? Say that again, Charles?
That ALS too, that'd have to be a critical care medic, is that right?
No, it can be anybody who can do an ALS procedure. So AEMT or paramedic. It has to be 3 doses of medications, not including ringers or saline or anything like that, T50 something. It has to be an actual medication. It has to be an IV push or an infusion. It can't be an IM or a sub-Q. It can go down the tube though, and
I'm sorry, IOs?
IO, yes. Or it's anybody that you intubate.
That'd be probably more of a paramedic skill.
So it's anybody that you intubate, or if you were to transfer them from one hospital to another and they're already intubated, that counts as well. So maintaining an intubation. There's a few other things, cardioversion, if you cardiovert somebody that's an ALS2. And I don't know if you do this, chest, needle decompressions, chest decompressions.
We are trained, but as far as actually doing them.
It's
yeah,
pretty rare.
pretty rare.
So that would count as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there something that when we turn that in, there's something that whoever the coders are, we talked about, well, me and Courtney and Chad have talked about that.
Mhm.
So that's something, they see that skill and they automatically bill that as ALS2.
They do, correct, yes.
So on the ALS2, I hate to interrupt you, but,
No, you're fine,
if we take somebody that is intubated,
yes.
do they have to actually be on a ventilator?
No.
Or do they just
You can use
being
the
bagged or whatever, that's
EVM is fine.
kind of ALS2?
Yep, but
Okay.
it has to be endotracheal and intubation.
Right,
It can't be
can't be
LMA.
a King LT.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
What about our mileage?
Your mileage, you're charging 1022, and it looks like 762 is the most that they pay for mileage, or allowable. So you're okay with your mileage.
Those rates, that is down at the bottom, the very bottom handwritten, the new rates.
So you're charging 13, okay, so you're charging $700, okay, so my fault, I thought we were going by the first line.
And I'm sorry, yeah, I didn't clarify.
Okay,
That's my fault.
So $700 is what you're charging for an ALS2, and 606 is what's allowable. You charge $500 for a BLS emergency, and $352 is allowable, and you charge $550 for an ALS emergency, and $418 is allowable. So it's definitely better rates than what I was looking at.
From our standpoint, is that something we would still consider increasing?
Do you have a large self-pay population?
Pretty decent.
So, do you discount them at all?
Not as of yet.
Okay. So that would be the one thing that I would caution you on. You don't want to make it so high that your self-paid population isn't calling 911 then, or is upset and it's hurting your public relations. I think you still have a little bit of room to increase this a bit. I wouldn't go too drastic though, but I would maybe look to, I would say another $50 to $100 per charge, if you're inclined to consider that.
What about the $13 a mile?
I think the $13 a mile is appropriate.
Okay.
Let me remind you, at one of the very first ambulance committee meetings we had, there was some folks that were gathered in the room had a hard time understanding that if you had charged I'm just throwing out a number, $750, Medicare only pays $400 a quarter. Some folks want to know what happens to that $325. Some people can got in their mind, there's nothing we can do about that $325, correct? When Medicare, the allowable amount is what is paid,
Correct.
and you're not, and you
You
don't.
write off the rest.
You write it off.
You write it off.
That is not bad money, that is not something we can go chase, that's nothing we can go to collections. Somehow that was very, I don't know if everybody can remember
And
that.
it's not that he's picking and choosing who he bills.
Yeah.
It's,
Right.
And that was one of those things, if we make these rate changes, we're gonna have to make sure folks in the county, I don't remember who was exactly in the room, but there's some people that couldn't grasp that idea. That $325 isn't, oh, y'all didn't do something right, y'all didn't do this right. It's just, this is all they pay.
Right.
Well, if you're a network, if you're not in network, the patient is liable for it.
It's commercial.
That's for commercial. So Medicare, you could charge $1 million a run if you wanted to. Medicare's only gonna pay you $250, you gotta write off the rest. Medicare says you can't bill the patient the rest. The only time you can bill the patient is if it's not medically necessary. So if they just really like the soup on Tuesdays at the hospital and they wanna go and they insist and you take them and it's not medically necessary that they needed an ambulance, you can bill the patient for the full amount, or for a deductible. And that's it.
But that is not lost revenue for Canyon County EMS. That's what I'm trying to, that's the word I was trying to get. That is not lost revenue. That's just all they pay.
Right.
Now, I was thinking, it's some Medicaid you can, like Jason said, bill the patient. Now, Medicaids, I was told that you cannot.
So there are HMO Medicares, and they sometimes will follow regular Medicare rules, traditional Medicare, and sometimes they will follow commercial payer rules. It just depends, honestly. For the most part, though, you can't really balance bill them either. Medicaid has very strict rules, and typically you cannot bill the patient for anything. Yeah, you get your $100 and that's it.
And that's something, obviously, you know, we do have a lot of it. in
Yes,
the county as
sure.
well.
Sure.
So we're gonna be very, if we're gonna make some changes, we're gonna be very open with the fact that, hey, this unclaimed cash that we're not getting back for the county, it's not real. It's gonna have, people are gonna have to be shook to say, you're never getting this money. Yeah.
They still won't understand.
So 2 questions on
Right.
top of that. Do you recommend some kind of discount to the self-rates?
So I would recommend a discount if, one, they're willing to pay the entire bill today. And not that they're transported, but you transport them, we send them a bill 30 days later, they call up and say, you sent me a bill for $700, and you authorize us to give a 20% discount or whatever if you will pay it today. That's what I would recommend, something like that. Or if they are willing to do it, I can't pay it all today, but I can do it in 3 separate payments, and they set those up, and then we can discount, you know, we can do 10% discount or something like that. I would, yes.
You can't discount it more than Medicare pays, is that right? Like if
You,
Medicare would pay $400 on this bill, you can't discount the citizen to $200. You can't take for the same service.
you can if they can prove that they are indigent or below poverty level, you can do that. But otherwise, no, you're correct.
What does the insurance usually pay off on a, like if you just have a DOA, and you don't do anything, just transport, what does the insurance usually get from the Medicare?
So the Medicare, I'll tell you exactly what they pay. So if you're dispatched and the patient's declared deceased after dispatch, but before you transport them, it's $352.63 is the allowable by Medicare. There's no mileage, just a flat BLS emergency rate.
That really hurts us, because that rate, just being flat rate, because we have such a long way to go for that to cover Murphy's.
Well, the DOA, traditionally, we will either take them to the funeral home, which we can still bill for that, correct? If we take it directly to the funeral home,
No.
it has to go to the morgue.
No, you can't bill for either. You can bill, you can't bill for the mileage. So if it's,
But if it's a flat rate, if we bill the flat rate, can we bill if we take it from the scene to a funeral home?
so are you billing Medicare first?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So if you're billing for the response to the scene, because when you got the call, they weren't declared dead, you're billing Medicare or whatever insurance carrier, you can't then bill a second charge on top of that.
Okay.
If they called and said, this patient is clearly deceased and has been deceased for a long time, you know that they're deceased before dispatch, you cannot bill the insurance carrier for that, but you can bill, if you want, you can bill a flat rate, or you could even bill, you know, your regular EMS or BLS emergency rate if you wanted to, and just bill that directly to the funeral home, the patient's family, whatever you want to do, yes. And if you want to include mileage in that, you can include mileage, or you can
But ain't
just,
that gonna cause for more write-offs?
well, no, not necessarily, because you are billing the patient's the patient, essentially, or the family or the estate.
Okay.
So the
So we would-
expectation is.
So the county would have to make a decision whether they wanted to go after the state or not
Correct,
for $350,
correct, yes.
which would not be feasible, I wouldn't think, but I'm not in that position.
So, and go along with what he had said, so what about write-offs? Because that's something I know we've talked about very little.